Hello, fellow artists and art lovers. I hope you guys are having a beautiful day, and thank you so much for clicking to watch another one of my personal sketchbook videos. This week's sketchbook spread was filled up with a graphite study of fabric and fabric folds. This idea came to me because in one of my first semesters in art school, in one of my first drawing classes, I had a professor who asked us to draw fabric. He brought in large sheets of fabric into class and either hung them from different places along the walls of the room or placed them in front of us on tables and really arranged them in ways in which the fabric showed a lot of interesting looking organic shapes and folds and shadows and things like that. And we just had to basically draw it from direct observation. It's an exercise that I really feel was super helpful for me back then, and it really helped me continue developing my observational skills, my hand-eye coordination, my ability to draw freehand, as well as my ability to pinpoint highlights, midtones, and darks so that I was then able to recreate them in my drawing. And another aspect of this exercise that I feel is super helpful for artists who are trying to achieve higher levels of realism in their work is that it allows us to pinpoint and recreate areas of both smoother, more gradual transitions between our different values, as well as areas of harder edges, more defined edges, in which a very dark value immediately turns into a very light value or vice versa with no gradual transition in between. Usually in a realistic drawing, there is a combination of both. And it's very important to be able to identify when these kinds of things are happening, whether we're using some sort of reference picture or we're drawing something that we have right in front of us. So I would highly recommend this drawing exercise. It might seem like a very boring study, but I promise that you're gonna gain a ton from it, especially if you're looking to improve the sense of realism in your work, because this study really helps you understand light behavior and is a great practice in terms of recreating highlights, midtones, and darks, so different values, and value is really what gives something a sense of three-dimensional form. This is an exercise I often recommend to my own students, and I realized I personally hadn't done it in a while myself, so I decided to go ahead and try it out again. All right, you guys, so before doing a very basic explanation of my drawing process for this piece, I want to send out a huge warm welcome to all of you new people just visiting my channel today for the very first time. I am so happy that you found me, and do consider subscribing because every single week I share new videos with art tips, drawing and painting tutorials, and encouragement for aspiring artists. And if you do subscribe, don't forget to click on that little notification bell so that YouTube can let you know whenever I publish a new video. Otherwise, you may or may not find out about it. All right, you guys, so in terms of the drawing supplies that I used for this exercise, as always, I went very simple with it. I used 4 drawing pencil grades. I started out my preliminary outline sketch using my HB pencil very lightly. And then after I was happy with recreating all of those different organic shapes, and I was happy also with the proportions of all of these different shapes when compared to my reference, I then started with the development of different values in layers of graphite, moving towards softer and softer pencil grades as I went. That initial layer was laid down with a 2B pencil. I then moved on to a 6B pencil, and I reserved my 8B pencil for my darkest darks. Of course, I always get to a point at which I am working back and forth, especially between the softer pencil grades, but generally speaking, that's the process that I try to follow. For this one, because I am pushing for realism a little bit more than my usual sketches, I did bring in my blending stump for those smoother transitions, and I don't always use this drawing tool because I often love a more sketchy, unfinished look. I also often love using alternative shading techniques such as hatching, cross-hatching, contour lines, scribbling, etc. But for this one, I did use my blending stump quite a lot, and even though it's very difficult for me to explain the different points at which I'm bringing in my blending stump throughout the process, what I can tell you is that I like making sure that I have deposited enough graphite on my paper so that I actually have something to blend out before bringing in my blending stump. Oftentimes we try to use our blending stump and nothing really happens. And many times this is because we're either using a pencil grade that is way too hard, the graphite is way too hard, or we haven't deposited enough graphite on our paper. And as I am using my blending stump, I'm also constantly looking at my reference picture so that I'm not pulling the graphite into areas of highlight. Of course, after you have been working on your drawing for a while and you have a lot of graphite all over your page, it gets pretty easy to accidentally kind of rub the bottom of your hand over a certain area and bring in a bit of graphite into areas of highlight. But that's where the erasers come in. As you can see throughout this process, I bring in both a regular soft rubber graphite eraser as well as my Mono Zero eraser, which is a special kind of eraser that I've shared about in past drawing videos. I love the Mono Zero eraser, which looks like some sort of pen with a tiny retractable, cylindrically shaped eraser inside of it that can be replaced. It allows you to get into tiny little spaces to pull up that graphite and bring out that highlight again. One thing I want to make sure not to forget to mention is that I would have had much better results if I had used a better, smoother drawing paper. But I decided to create this study in this particular sketchbook because it's the one that I've been using for this series. This paper in this sketchbook has a bit of a weird tooth to it when compared to my other drawing pads by Strathmore and others that I've used. And I wasn't really able to smooth out the graphite as much as I would have liked to really give the illusion of smoother fabric texture. I really wanted to make sure that I didn't forget mentioning that, just in case you guys who are just getting started on your journeys and are looking for drawing papers and different drawing surfaces to work on, have that in mind. The texture, the tooth of the paper is going to have a great effect on both the drawing process as well as your final outcome. And if you're really looking to create a very smooth texture, you're probably going to want to look for smoother paper because you're not going to be fighting against that texture. All right, and last but not least, in terms of the things that I wanted to make sure to mention about my process is that I always make sure if I'm going to do any burnishing, which is basically when you press down on your paper very hard with your pencil, I make sure not to do it until the final stages of my drawing process and only if I really need to. So all of those initial layers of graphite were laid down very gently, very carefully, without really pressing down or scratching my paper at all. Okay, I'm going to leave you to enjoy the rest of this drawing process. All of my drawing supplies are going to be left, as always, down below for you in the description box of this video in case you'd like to go and check them out for yourself. If you have any questions or comments for me at all, make sure to leave them down below for me in the comment section. I always read every single one of those comments, even though sometimes it does take me a little time to respond. I love hearing from you guys. That is going to do it for this week's sketchbook video. I really hope that you enjoyed it and found some useful nuggets in it. And if you did like it, please make sure to give it a thumbs up because it really helps support the work that I am doing here on YouTube and helps other artists get to know about my channel. I'm going to be leaving a couple of drawing/sketching videos right here for you to enjoy next. Have a beautiful rest of the day. Don't forget to subscribe so that I can see you very, very soon for another video, and stay inspired. Bye, guys.